A part 2 to the movie I Am Legend has been announced. I Am Legend is a 1954 post-apocalyptic horror novel by Richard Matheson, and although it was only 160 pages, it influenced later zombie and vampire stories, and it also helped popularize the post-apocalyptic genre. I sometimes hear that George Romero's Night of the Living Dead is what kicked off the zombie apocalypse genre, but I Am Legend came out over a decade before Romero's movie. There have been 3 main movie adaptations to the book: The Last Man on Earth from 1964, The Omega Man in 1971, and I Am Legend in 2007. And while 2 of these movies stuck with the book plot pretty close, they all had different endings, which is disappointing because the ending is what the whole story is ultimately about. The book takes place in the 70s after some kind of war that's not fully explained, but the bombings from that war now cause large periodic dust storms. Then a virus created as a cancer treatment mutated into a pathogen that kills off most of humanity, turning survivors into vampiric-like creatures. These vampires are pretty close to their stereotypes in fiction and folklore, like they are blood-sucking, pale-skinned, and nocturnal. The story focuses on U.S. Army virologist Robert Neville, who is immune to the virus and who may be the last remaining human. Neville barricades himself indoors nightly as vampires swarm his house, and protects himself using the traditional vampire repellents of garlic, mirrors, and crucifixes. During the day, Neville hunts them with wooden stakes since they seem impervious to bullets, and scavenges for supplies. Occasional flashbacks reveal how the disease killed his wife and daughter. After years of isolation, he's depressed and nearly an alcoholic. He does research at the local library, discovering that the root of the vampire disease is probably a strain of bacteria capable of infecting both living and dead hosts. He also learns that exposing vampires to direct sunlight or inflicting wide oxygen-exposing wounds causes the bacteria to switch from being anaerobic symbionts to aerobic parasites, rapidly consuming their hosts when exposed to air. But the bacteria also seals narrow wounds, explaining how the vampires are bulletproof and why the stakes, which make larger wounds, kill them. Lastly, he learns that there are 2 types of vampires: conscious ones who are living with a worsening infection, and undead ones who have died but are partly reanimated by the bacteria. While out, Neville finds a scared woman named Ruth. Neville explains some of his findings, including his theory that he developed immunity against the infection after being bitten by an infected vampire bat years ago when stationed in Panama. He prepares to test Ruth to see if she's infected or immune, but she knocks him unconscious. Once Neville comes to, he finds a note from her confessing that she is a vampire. Her note says that only the undead vampires are pathologically violent, but not those like her who are alive at the time of infection. These living infected have slowly adapted to this disease and are gradually developing their own society. Ruth admits she was sent to spy on him and that he was responsible for the deaths of many of her fellow vampires, including her husband. Still, she has romantic feelings for Neville and urges him to flee the city to avoid capture. Neville ignores Ruth's warning, assuming he'll be treated fairly by the new society of living infected. One night, a group of living vampires show up and kill the undead ones outside his home with an almost gleeful, violent bloodlust, then break down his front door. In a panic, Neville opens fire on them but is shot and subdued. Imprisoned and dying, he is visited by Ruth, who tells him that she is a senior member of the new society, but unlike the others who perceive him as a murderer and intend to execute him, she doesn't resent him. Neville asks her why they are so violent. She says that new societies are always primitive and violent, and out of mercy gives him a packet of suicide pills. Neville accepts his fate and asks Ruth not to let this society become too heartless and brutal. Ruth hesitates, then promises to try, kisses him, and leaves. Neville goes to his prison window and sees them staring back at him with the same hatred and fear that he once felt for them. But now he knows that they are the next evolution of humans, where survival of the fittest became survival of the most brutal. As the pills take effect, he is amused by the thought that he will become their new mythology and legend, just as vampires once were to humans. Some people were disappointed by this book's bleak ending. There's nothing heroic about his death. In the 2007 movie, Neville sacrifices himself for society using a grenade. And it's just a paint-by-the-numbers Hollywood movie with cartoonish zombies. The Charlton Heston and Vincent Price movies kept closer to the novel's plot, but still changed their endings with some spear-stabbing thing. In the book, Neville isn't a guy who selflessly sacrifices himself to save others, because there are no others. Hunting vampires and searching for a cure keeps him from falling into despair and drinking himself to death. When Neville asks Ruth to not let them get too brutal and heartless, why would he even care? They are about to execute him, so the hell with them. I think Neville feels that Ruth is the hope for this new race of creatures. In Greek mythology, Pandora's box, which was actually a jar, was a gift from the gods to Pandora, the first woman on Earth. It contained all the evils of the world, which were released when Pandora opened the box. However, at the bottom of the box was hope, which can mean that no matter how bad things may get in life, hope is still there for a better outcome. Ruth showed him compassion with his coming execution, and Neville may feel that her compassion is what gives that bloodthirsty group hope to thrive. So after fighting and killing all those vampires and now facing his own death, he doesn't go out with a big fight scene and explosions or seething with hate and anger, cursing the vampires. He is able to regain his humanity with the hope that these violent creatures will be able to find theirs, which makes this a much better ending than those movies. Good night.
Boo.